One of the most influential leaders in Japan's post-World War II history was a 67-year-old, Shinzo Abe, who served as the country's prime minister for a long time. He was born on September 21, 1954, in Tokyo, Japan. Early beginnings and first term as prime minister. Abe came from a well-known political family. From 1957 to 1960, his grandfather Kishi Nobusuke served as Japan's prime minister, and his great-uncle, Sato Eisaku, held the same post from 1964 to 1972. Abe relocated to the United States after earning his degree from Seikei University in Tokyo, 1977, and attended the University of Southern California, Los Angeles, to study political science. He went back to Japan in 1979 and started working for Kobe Steel, Limited Liability. Later, he got involved in the Liberal Democratic Party, LDP, and in 1982 he started working as secretary to his father, Shintaro Abe, who was Japan's foreign minister. Abe was first elected to parliament in 1993, and in 2005 he became chief cabinet secretary. He rose quickly to the top, becoming Japan's first prime minister to have been born after World War II and the youngest prime minister since the war in 2006. However, his administration was hardly hit by a number of scandals, notably the government's loss of pension records, that affected over 50 million claims. In the upper house elections that followed, the LDP suffered a significant defeat, and in September of the same year, he announced his resignation due to ulcerative colitis. In contrast, Abe later declared that he had beat the illness with the help of medication when he took office again as prime minister in 2012. After that, he won re-election in 2014 and 2017, becoming the longest-serving prime minister in Japanese history. His popularity fluctuated, but he remained largely unchallenged due to his influence in the LDP, which amended its rules to allow him to serve a third term as party leader. Second term and Abenomics. Abe quickly launched an ambitious economic program to jumpstart Japan's long-stagnant economy and hasten the rebuilding of northeastern Honshu, Tohoku, devastated by the earthquake and tsunami in 2011. The program, quickly dubbed Abenomics, included measures such as raising the inflation rate, allowing the yen's value to decline in comparison to the dollar and other major currencies, increasing the money supply, and increasing government spending on significant public works projects. The Abe government received a big political boost in the July 2013 elections to the upper house of the Diet, when candidates from the LDP and its new Komeito allies won enough seats to guarantee them a majority in that chamber. Abe's economic program initially appeared to be succeeding, as seen by the strong growth in 2013 and the first half of 2014, as well as a decline in the unemployment rate. However, the second of a three-step increase in the national consumption, sales, tax, enacted in 2012 by the DPJ-led government, in April 2014, caused a sharp decline in Japan's economy for the rest of the year. By autumn, the country had fallen into recession, and Abe's approval rating was rapidly declining. Even though Abe's approval rating as a person had constantly been below 50% since December 2014, the LDP triumphed handily in the elections for the upper chamber of the Diet in July 2016. As a result, the LDP and new Komeito gained supermajorities in the upper and lower houses, opening the door for constitutional amendments that Abe had long favored. The opposition DPJ's near-total collapse and its inability to put forth any viable alternatives to Abenomics helped the LDP gain support. Abe became Japan's longest-serving prime minister in November 2019, when his time in office eclipsed that of Koshaku Katsura Taro, who had served 3 non-consecutive terms in the early 20th century. Abe announced in August 2020 that he would step down as prime minister owing to a flare-up of ulcerative colitis. Abe's resignation announcement led to an internal struggle among LDP factions, because he declined to name a successor. He was eventually succeeded by Yoshihide Suga, but Abe continued to hold sway over domestic politics in Japan, even after Suga was replaced by current Prime Minister Fumio Kishida. During his record-breaking term as Prime Minister, Shinzo Abe never achieved his goal of revising Japan's constitution to transform his country into what the Japanese call a normal nation, capable of using its military to defend its national interests in the same way that any other country does. He also did not return Japan's technological edge and economic prowess to the terrifying levels of the late 1980s and early 1990s, when Japan was regarded as China is today, as the world's #2 economy that, with organization, cunning, and central planning, could soon be #1. He drew the country closer to the United States and most of its Pacific allies after failing to resolve long-standing disputes with Russia and China, except in South Korea, where old animosities ruled. He established Japan's first National Security Council and reinterpreted, almost by fiat, the constitutional constraints he couldn't change, so that Japan was committed to the collective defense of its allies for the first time. He spent more on defense than most Japanese politicians considered prudent. Shinzo Abe's influence was still evident long after he left office. Mr. Abe was no longer in office when Russia invaded Ukraine this year. However, his influence was still felt when Japan announced, after 10 weeks of deliberation, that it would phase out Russian coal and oil imports. Mr. Abe went even further, suggesting that it was time for Japan to enter into some kind of nuclear sharing agreement with the US, breaking his country's long-held taboo on even discussing the wisdom of having its own arsenal. His efforts to ease Japan's post-war, American-written constitutional restraints reflected a recognition that Japan needed its allies more than ever. However, alliances meant that defense commitments were reciprocal. Mr. Abe believed that he needed to preserve his country's relationship with Washington, even if it meant delivering a gold-plated golf club to Donald J. Trump at Trump Tower days after he was elected president. On July 8, 2022, Abe went to the southern city of Nara to campaign for a colleague running for Japan's upper house. He was delivering a speech when he was shot by a gunman, a 41-year-old who is believed to be a former member of the self-defense forces, Japan's equivalent of a navy. According to NHK and other news reports, the suspect said he was dissatisfied with Abe but that it has nothing to do with political grudges. Abe was conscious when taken to the hospital, but died later from his injuries. He leaves his wife, Akie, a Japanese radio DJ whom he married in 1987. His assassination in Nara on Friday, however, served as a reminder that despite speaking in the frustratingly bland terms that Japanese politicians regard as a survival skill, he managed to become perhaps the most transformational politician in Japan's post-World War II history. Please subscribe and click the notification bell for more upcoming videos. Thank you.